There are 10 criteria that Sotheby's specialists consider when assigning prices to art, jewelry, wine, watches, and more. This is how we determine the value of art.
Condition is the state of preservation of the object.
The physical life of a work of art reflected in the present.
How much like the day it left the artist's studio is it today?
We often will get a piece of jewelry and say, oh, this has really been enjoyed. That's my favorite line.
As soon as you hear, well, it's pretty good for its age, you generally know it's not going to be commercially valuable.
Learning how to determine condition is one of the mile markers on the road to becoming a specialist.
When we're writing condition reports in advance of an auction, we have to accurately represent the condition to a potential buyer. I once spent 9 hours condition checking a Damien Hirst pill cabinet. Each individual pill had to be pulled out of an immaculate drawer, unwrapped out of tissue paper, inspected before perfectly wrapping it up and putting it back in the box.
Condition impacts value tremendously. The extreme example is a book like The Great Gatsby. A pristine copy in a pristine jacket might easily sell for $400,000. Take that jacket off, crumple it up, and throw it away, and the still pristine book is worth maybe $10,000 to $12,000.
There's a wrong assumption that anything old should show signs of age. In fact, the most valuable, sought-after objects look new.
It's not so much that if something is in bad condition, it is negatively impacted in terms of value, but rather that one time that something is in pristine condition, then it will have extraordinary value. When you're looking at an Impressionist painting, most of the time there's something wrong with it. And so it almost becomes that nothing's wrong with it, it just has condition issues.
If something is excavated, there are certain condition issues that are inherent in it. So therefore, breaks and restorations are standard, and you expect them.
We've been through 2 world wars in the period that I represent, so occasionally you find a picture that may have had a piece of shrapnel went through it, or has been in storage or was rolled up.
From extremes of cold to hot and back again, what can happen to the surface of the oil is that it contracts and it can shrink so that you can get craquelure running through the paint.
Richard Diebenkorn started his Ocean Park series in the late 60s. He was poor, he was living in Santa Monica, he bought lower quality canvas, and he didn't prime his canvases. And because of that, his paintings have a tendency to crack. But if they don't have any cracks, then it's sort of this miraculous, spectacular thing.
It's weird if you see a Joan Mitchell painting from the 1950s that doesn't have cracking. She is such a dynamic and aggressive painter, and there's so much paint on the surface of her works. But if there's cracking to the extent where there's paint loss, and that paint loss has been filled in with a conservator going in and retouching the work, that can cross over into a devaluation of the work.
Deciding how much you restore a painting is very much up to the collector themselves. So quite often, a painting comes to us and we will say, actually, it's better to offer it at auction, not cleaned and not restored, and let the new collector decide what they want to do with it, because some people might want their Dutch landscape to look like it's been sitting over a smoky wood fire for the last century.
Traditionally, a painting being dirty has been an exciting thing. It means it's been off the market, it's a new thing. A picture that's over-cleaned will have a limit to its value. However, that depends on the picture. A Rembrandt in unsatisfactory condition is still by Rembrandt.
A small amount of retouching or small minor condition issues won't necessarily affect the value, but we will put an estimate on it and will allow the market to decide what that picture ought to be worth.
Sold. Thank you very much.
Wine is very sensitive, like a lot of art. One day out in the sun, one day in freezing cold can affect wine dramatically. It is incredibly important with some of the rarest wines in the world that it is stored correctly. That is why we do cellar visits to see how wine has been stored, literally down to the degree, to make sure we're confident that older wine has been stored in the proper manner. However, wine and the label itself are different. Wine has gotten so expensive that a scuffed label somehow or another has affected the taste of the wine. So if it's heavily damp stained, soiled, torn, those are words we put in the catalog. We have some clients who recognize that it's really not about what's on the outside, it's what's on the inside. But we have some clients who look at label condition and say they only want pristine. Whether that affects what's in the bottle, what's not, that's their, determination to make. But we find there really is no correlation between label condition and wine condition.